Buenas, estamos aquí en una nueva entrevista en el canal de YouTube de Solo Wrestling y en esta ocasión tenemos aquí al jefe, al CEO de Ring of Honor. Tenemos aquí a Joe Koff. Mr. Koff, what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
So we are doing this interview because this year marks the 10th anniversary since Sinclair Broadcasting Group bought Ring of Honor from Carrie Silkin. So let's start with the beginning, Mr. Koff. You said last week on the ROH Strong podcast that before buying Ring of Honor, you haven't seen the company, but Sinclair already had in mind like buying a wrestling company. So if you can explain a little bit more of that, like how did you fall in love with the company, and also why did Sinclair wanted to invest in the wrestling business?
That's an excellent question. So let's go back to 2010, where this all kind of started. It was at that time, and let me just, before I go there, Alex, Sinclair Broadcast Group is one of the largest television broadcasting companies at that time and still. So we owned lots of television stations across the United States. At the time in 2010, I think we covered 39% of America. Now we're closer, we're higher than that. You know, we're at our maximum levels. Plus we also have our regional sports networks. We have a lot of coverage. And because we were a broadcasting company, I always felt that content was something that we should not only have, we should own it. And in 2010, the WWE decided at that time to go off of what we call linear broadcasting, over the air, free channels to the home. And they were strictly going to go to cable platform, which was a paying platform. So Sinclair as a company is a very, very innovative company, always thinking about things ahead of other people. And I went to our chairman and CEO at the time, David Smith, El Gran Jefe, and I said to him, I think we have an opportunity here to get into professional wrestling. And, you know, Dave knew professional wrestling and he knew about it. And he knows the relationship that professional wrestling has always had to television. As a matter of fact, Alex, professional wrestling was probably one of the first programs that was ever on television in the late 40s and early 50s. And there's a reason for that, which we don't have to get into, but it's a good business reason. And I said, we should look into this. And Dave said to me, he said, okay, I hear that. And I think there might be some interesting things here. Go see if you can find a wrestling promotion that A, would be available to buy, and one that you think would fit what we're trying to achieve. And I had heard about a promotion called Ring of Honor. I was not as familiar with it. I think I passed by it a couple of times when it was on HDTV as I was scrolling through the channels. But Gary Juster, who is an old wrestling friend of mine, who's my director of operations, said, I want you to introduce you to Carrie Silkin. And I want you to go to a Ring of Honor event because I think it's exactly what you're looking for. And the reason why he said that, Alex, is probably because of my past and what kind of wrestling I always favored. I've been a fan since I was a little boy, and I've still been a fan throughout my whole life. And while I started watching wrestling in New York City area, the way of York, I started with Madison Square Garden with the WWE, the original, the father of Vince McMahon. And his company was called Capital Wrestling. But even then, it was large guys. It was the Bruno Sammartinos. It was the Gorilla Monsoons, the Stan Hansens. And these are names that only the older fans that are watching probably recognize. But it was a style of wrestling that I just loved, and I was captivated by it, and I loved it. But it was the only wrestling I really knew because at that time, and I'm going back to the 60s and, you know, early 70s, wrestling in America was only on local television stations. And the only television station programming was the wrestling that was that promoter's territory. So I grew up. It's like, I hate to say it, if people know baseball, I grew up a Yankees fan, which is, you know, people all over the nation were Yankees, but that was my home team. So when I went to college, I went to a different territory, and the territory in Florida where I went to college was NWA, the old NWA, where Harley Race was the champion and Ric Flair was the champion. And it was a totally different style of wrestling. It was much more athletic. It was not as big guys. They had some big guys, but they had guys, Alex, that could go 60 minutes easily. And I just loved that style, went to all the matches when I was in college, and always loved wrestling from that point. And Ring of Honor, back to why Ring of Honor to me was like the son of WWE and NWA, in that it had its own identity, but it was rooted in the integrity of the sport. I recognize that Ring of Honor is a sport. It's an entertaining sport, but nonetheless sport. The wrestlers who wrestle for Ring of Honor are athletes. They care about their bodies. They have integrity in what they do. They're students of their craft. It gives me the chills kind of thinking about it from that day, because I still feel that way when I see Ring of Honor wrestle. And so I went back in and saw the show. And if you've ever been to a Ring of Honor show, you'll know that there are moments inside of the show where everyone becomes authentically placed in that exact moment, where the wrestlers, the fans, everyone involved are all one. And the chanting starts and the excitement starts. And it gave me chills. And I said, we have to own this promotion. And we were able to make a deal with Carrie Silkin. And that's exactly how we got Ring of Honor. And that's why we got Ring of Honor.
Now that you mentioned Carrie Silkin, how was the relationship with Carrie? I assume that it went perfectly fine, because we know when since the very first day you bought Ring of Honor, Carrie has been an ambassador for Ring of Honor. He has been in ringside in all the East Coast shows. He has been like agreeing with the world title changes. So how can you describe us the relationship that Sinclair and yourself have with Carrie Silkin?
It's totally respectful. I mean, it's it's first and foremost a business relationship, but it's one out of respect and honor. And it was important for Carrie. I mean, Carrie had to make a very tough decision for himself to turn over Ring of Honor. And I'm sure he was worried about whose hands that was going to, because, that was his baby. And he was passing along his baby and wanted to make sure that his baby was in good hands. And I had to earn that. I mean, talk is cheap. You know that. Everyone says what they have to say to get what they want, but the proof is in the pudding. And Carrie and I have a wonderful relationship. It's warm, it's true, it's authentic. And I wouldn't think of not having him involved. To me, he is what Ring of Honor represented. And we were able to do things that he wasn't able to do, but we both had the same intent and the same commitment to the brand.
So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of Ring of Honor, because Ring of Honor in the 2000, it was more like a DVD company, and then in the moment that you bought the company, you make the transition to TV, then you do the transition to internet pay-per-view, then to national cable pay-per-view. So how was this process to this transformation of having a DVD-centric company to have like a TV product weekly and try to do these deals with the cable pay-per-view providers and try to reach more houses in the US with Ring of Honor?
Yeah, I think that was one of the selling points to me, is that we know how to do that. That's our business. We have relationships with cable companies. We are a television company. We have our own distribution. Not only do we own the content, but we also have the distribution. And it makes a big difference, because without distribution, nobody can see it. So we had that going in. So it wasn't that hard a transition. Actually, when we bought the company, from a business perspective, their DVD operation and their merchandise operation was a very important piece of that company. But, it almost is to technology, because in 2010 and before that, DVDs were the way people watched it. Blockbusters were still open, and video stores were open, and Netflix was starting to send videos and DVDs through the mail, but that was the time. But as technology improved and people could get it on demand, the DVD market kind of soured a little bit. And I don't mean soured, I think it just kind of obsoleted itself. And so we had to move in a different direction, which is why we created our Honor Club, which is a subscription service, but it's also our own portal into everything Ring of Honor, where there's a free way to watch, and there's also a membership that gives you access to all of the robust product. Even though we bought it in 2010, we own all of the content from 2002 from its inception. So when you think about all the wrestlers that are wrestling today in other promotions other than Ring of Honor, there's a very good chance that they pass through Ring of Honor, and we probably have their greatest matches still to date. So I'm really proud of that.
Now that you mentioned the Honor Club, I wanted to ask you if it's possible to talk about maybe the numbers that Ring of Honor does on pay-per-view, because I assume that from the very first pay-per-view that you aired back in June of 2014 up until the point that our Honor Club became a thing, the numbers must be like fluctuating, because I assume that more people are subscribed now to Honor Club, so that means less pay-per-view buys. So how did you deal with this, that having this big pay-per-view with a big price for a single show to change to this format of having your own VOD subscription a monthly?
Yeah. I mean, we took a lot of that into, we don't ever share numbers, Alex, so I'm not going to get into specific numbers, but they do fluctuate. But you know what? Interestingly enough, yes, there was a little bit of a flip, but my job as the head of Ring of Honor, but also as somebody who presents content to the world, is to make sure that anyone who wants to get it is able to get it the way they want to get it. And if you sacrifice a little here for a little there, it all evens out in the end. So it was a matter of matching, and quite frankly, to be honest, with COVID, because we haven't been able to tour the way we used to tour, our subscriptions obviously and understandably dropped down because we weren't getting the true value that they were expecting. They will go up immediately once we start going back and producing shows on a more regular basis. One of the things we made a very conscious decision to do was not to be with crowds yet, because we found that in our current TV, and I don't know if you're watching it, but it's been terrific, fabulous TV, there are no spoilers because there's nobody there. And our guys are so honorable that when people are watching Ring of Honor television or watching the Pure tournament for the first time, they're seeing it as almost as it's happening without any knowledge of what the outcome is. And for that to happen in 2021 is really rare, really, really rare. And I'm really, really proud of that. So it's good.
Cool. Yeah, and also regarding Honor Club, I wanted to ask about the process of digitalizing all the archives from Ring of Honor, because you have all these VHS, you have all these DVDs with of course copyright music. So how was it a hard process to digitalize all these shows from the golden era from Ring of Honor, as many said, to put them on Honor Club available for the fans?
It was, and again, you pointed out all of the things that would make it difficult. A lot of our earlier stuff has the music stripped out of it because of rights and because of things like that. But for the most part, that library is, I would say, fairly complete. I mean, if so, you don't hear a ring entrance music. Again, you're not watching Ring of Honor for the entrances. That's not what we do. It's not our. There are other companies that rely a lot more on their entrances than we do. I love our entrances. Our guys love their entrances. But when Ring of Honor speaks, it speaks to the mat action, what's going on in the ring, not what's going on a microphone. It's a big differentiation. I'm sure you know that as a fan.
And of course, I also wanted to talk about, now we're talking about this, all the evolution we've seen in the Ring of Honor product since you bought the company 10 years ago to the actual right time. So we also noticed some changes in the production, because if you see if you see Best in the World from 2011 and you see Best in the World from the last year, the difference is amazing. You see all these LEDs, you see the screen, you see the lights, you see the pyro. So when was the moment that you as a company said, we want to invest to try to make the product look better? I assume if order to try to reach a bigger audience, you thought that you maybe need to look more professional, maybe to new people.
No, well, you always want to look. We're a television producing company, so you want to look professional. But if you think of yourself, I'd like you to take out a picture, not for our fans and not for you, what you looked like in 2011 versus what you look like now. I mean, things change, people change, styles change, attitudes change. Technology has been the biggest difference. What used to cost so much money in 2011 to do is so much more efficient to do it today. And without fans, we had to do something differently to almost mitigate that. Not to take, they weren't there, so there was nothing we can do about it. But we set up our arena differently, and we were using technology and screens. But the truth of the matter is if you looked at every year of programming, if you had the time to go through all of the TV from 2011 to 2012 to 2013, you would always see improvements. You would see improvements almost by show, because we're constantly learning about what we like, what could be better, and what we should be doing differently. And the day we stop is the day we shouldn't keep going, because there's always going to be some other aspect, again, for the fan. I mean, we want the fan engagement. Ring of Honor's fan engagement, Alex, is really, really high. In our 500th episode, which is going to be airing next week, those two matches that you're going to see in the 500th episode, which is a milestone in American television or any television to produce 500 consecutive episodes. Those are matches that the fans asked for. We solicited it, we asked them, and we listened. And I don't know of a lot of promotions that go to that leg or depth, but that's what makes Ring of Honor special.
Now that you talk about this engagement with the audience, I also wanted to ask you about the engagement with the talent, because as you said, not every company listens to their audience, but not every company also listens to the talent. And as so many talent have said, that at the end of 2019, there was a big meeting for talent to propose ideas and the ideas that have been implementing in the product. So what did you decide to reunite like everyone in this big meeting? And what was your main goal to maybe have the morale a little bit up in backstage, or just to have some ideas from the talent itself that it's the one that it's performing every week?
Yeah, I think what it has to do with is my management philosophy, regardless of whether it's wrestling or running a television station or whatever the other aspects of my career that I've had. I'm a very big believer in collaboration. If I was so crazy to think whatever I think is the right way, I would take myself out of the job. I mean, I'm open to other people's ideas and other people's thinking. And quite frankly, we've never been set up where we tell everybody what to do exactly, when to do it, how to do it. Our guys are told how the story is to be end. When I say that is, I mean, outcomes may be determined, because wrestling is a continuous story, 500 episodes continuous. But how they tell the story is up to the wrestlers. And that's what I think makes Ring of Honor unique and special for wrestlers in the business, because they're not told what to say. They might be suggested on how they could say it differently. But I'm not interested in anything but them telling the best story in the way they see it to deliver the outcome that the expectation is overachieved by all parties watching, participating, and then seeing later.
Also, now that you talk about this freedom of from a creative standpoint for the talent, like for a lot of years, like people thought that Ring of Honor was only a step for talent before going to bigger leagues, if we call it like that. But right now, we've seen that there is plenty of talent that wants to stay with Ring of Honor. They have like bigger contracts. They have multi-annual contracts. We see this kind of interaction. Also, we saw last year that when everybody was firing people, Ring of Honor was resigning their talent, paying their talent for staying safe in his house. Can you talk a little bit about this philosophy that you have with the talent as a company, man?
Well, I think as a company, Sinclair, again, my parent company, our parent company, was very responsible in how they handled the whole pandemic, and still handling it really well. And, you know, because nobody really knew how long it was going to go, we were able to say, we're going to stay the course. I mean, we have lots of international talent in Europe and Ireland, I mean, in England and Ireland and Australia and places like that can't get into the country. Scotland can't get into the country. Fortunately, our Mexican wrestlers, our Hispanic wrestlers from Mexico have been able to come in as of late. So, I mean, there's moral responsibilities and people responsibilities. At the end of the day, I remember the day I made the decision to send everyone home. It wasn't about wrestling anymore. It was about humanity and the responsibility of someone to make sure that people are where they need to be and should be in case it got worse. And it was getting worse, as you well know, by the minute. And I wanted everybody where they wanted to be and where they needed to be. And it didn't matter that we had to cancel a show or we had to cancel 2 or 3 shows. The people's health and safety is far more important to me than whether we put on a show or not. And I think our guys appreciate that, and they should. And I'm not suggesting that they don't, but that's who I want to work for. I mean, that's the kind of company I would want to work for. But at the end of the day, Alex, it's still a business, and we operate it as a business, and we make business decisions every day based on what the current conditions are. So we will continue to operate just like we've operated.
Also, just the last question about the talents and their contracts. Right now, the environment is so different from it was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, maybe people only can choose maybe to go to sign with WWE or TNA. Now you have Ring of Honors with their contracts. You have WWE, All Elite. You have Impact Wrestling. You have even New Japan signing people. Do you think that it's more difficult right now to keep the talent and to make them sign maybe longer term deals? Because I also assume that as a company, maybe also as a booker, you want to know how much time are you going to have, like the talent to be able to create the show and to write and all of that.
I think it's a great time to be a wrestler as opposed to be on my side of the business. Look, you know, the wrestlers need to do what the talent, the wrestlers need to do what's best for what they think is for their personal lives and their careers. And while I wish there wasn't as much opportunity around because, you know, supply and demand in economics tells you the whole story, I only want people who want to be at Ring of Honor because they feel it's the best place to be. I'm not looking to get into that kind of thing with money and stuff like that. We provide an environment and working conditions and a way of life that transcends dollars to a lot of people, and a lot of people will say, I want the money. So wherever the talent wants to go, there's places for them to go, and I'm glad. Then it becomes, okay, I got the money, but do I really want to be told what to do? You got to weigh all those. You know that. You weigh all those things when you make these kinds of decisions. And I'm not going to waver from what we represent as a company and working for the company. That's up to the people to make that choice. We've had people leave us. We've had big names leave us. And God bless them. They're all doing terrific. And I'm glad, because I have a piece of all that no matter where they go. But they made decisions for themselves and their families. And you know what? While they were with me, they worked as hard as they could and gave our fans the best wrestling on the planet. And you know what? That's all I could ask them for. So that's part of business. I mean, you know, and you have professionals. You have a big professional soccer team in Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken. And talent and stars leave for money or stay because they love working for that team or being in Barcelona. I don't know why anyone would leave Barcelona, if you want to know the truth. It's so beautiful. But you know that's the economics of business today.
Yeah, that's how everything works. And now that you mentioned that you have plenty of international talent, I wanted to talk about the Hispanic talent, because for a lot of years, Ring of Honors didn't have like this kind of Spanish Mexican guys. And since 2019, we saw with the signing of First Bandido, that was a hot star in the indie scene. We then saw Rush became a thing, and now they are like a big part of the program, because you know they have La Facción, they have Dragon Lee, you have Bestia, you have the Mexa Squad. Was this just like, you know, Ring of Honor wanted to have the best talent around, or was it something like we maybe need to have more Hispanic talent in order to engage better with our Spanish speaking audience?
Look, there's no that is certainly a byproduct that you get by having. We look to hire the best talent. And we have a good relationship with CMLL as a co-promotion, and we like their talent, and we like the way they operate their business. It's one of the reasons why we had such a good relationship, and still do. It's just because of COVID, there's not a lot of transference of talent. But even with New Japan, we respect the way they run their business. We respect the style of wrestling that they put forward. You know, Bandito is such an exciting performer, and Rush is such an amazing performer. Why wouldn't I want them wrestling for me? Does it help us in the Southwest, perhaps in some of or higher Hispanic markets? It does, but you know, I have found, Alex, that Hispanic wrestling fans really want the full lucha. They want the full lucha experience, and these guys are wrestling in matches that I don't know if it's the full lucha experience. What they're able to experience, though, is the amazing athleticism of these guys and their talent. I think the environment changes and the context changes, but they're the best in the world. So why wouldn't I want them wrestling for me?
Course, and also talking about the engagement with the Hispanic audience, do you have plans maybe to improve this engagement with the Hispanic audience? And I don't know, maybe some content in Spanish, adding subtitles, because we know you have only a good commentary team for the pay-per-views, but the thing is that only people in the US with the traditional cable pay-per-view can hear that audio and not in another club on Fight TV. This is something that you are trying to fix for further
Look, we always look at it and we're aware of it. Again, our product is just an American product that has Spanish wrestlers in it. And I don't want to dismiss that as being anything less than spectacular. But again, for a Spanish viewer who's watching Hispanic language broadcasting and stuff like that, or is used to a certain style of wrestling, I'm not sure we're quite there yet. I think if there's anything that we should be considering, and I'm not making any big announcements here, Alex, but we have toyed with a Spanish language version of the show, but we're not there yet. It's really just on a piece of paper on how we would do it, because I would want to give the Hispanic viewers and fans their experience the way they want to experience it, not the way this Anglo thinks they should experience it. I don't like that. That doesn't appeal to me. So.
Yeah, of course, it makes sense. So now talking about the present, 2020 was such a difficult and also good year for Ring of Honor, because you started like 2020 with plenty of different ideas, a lot of plans, the Pure tournament, the women's world title tournament, also all the announcements for the WrestleMania week with Supercard of Honor and everything. Then the pandemic hit, and also we saw like a change of plan, because the man that was in charge of the creative team that left the company. So was it difficult, like, to, when you have all these plans for 2020, now the guy that is like getting the ideas left the company? How was the process to have this idea of how everything works, then everything stops with the pandemic, and then everything, the creative team changes? So was it difficult to handle the situation?
You know what, in retrospect, it was daunting how we handled the situation. But you know what? This is the first time in the world's history for people like us who are living it. We're living it in real time. We're not reading about it in a history book. We're not learning how it was solved. We're not learning how we're living it. And, we had to figure out how to keep producing live original content with our product. And we were able to go to different resources. And our talent has been very, very generous and gracious and creative with what they've been able to do. People stepped up. Every person in my organization, from the business standpoint to the wrestling standpoint, and even to our vendors, they all stepped up, because A, we were working, and B, we had a responsibility to continue to present the best product ever, like we always have. So as I look back, I think it's amazing what we were able to accomplish. And the Pure tournament is a beautiful piece of wrestling history, from the way it was produced, the way it was presented. The pandemic allowed us to reset some of the things, because, when you're doing it week after week after week, it's hard to change things when you're doing it week after week after week, especially if you don't have a second team of people who can do those other things while you're doing the things. What the pandemic did for us, we hit pause, Alex. We hit a pause button, and we started to think about, how do we want to reposition ourselves, reimagine ourselves? How do we want to represent ourselves and represent ourselves at the same time? So I think we just came through it in flying colors. I'm so proud of what we've been able to do. And you're going to see it. The 500th episode that will air next week is absolutely fantastic piece of television. Not only the matches, the way it's produced, everything about the 500th episode is just beautiful, and I'm so proud of it.
You also mentioned that on the ROH Strong podcast, that you think that right now the TV product that Ring of Honor is producing is the best TV product that they ever have. So it's curious to think, like, crazy to think, like, since the pandemic had some good things, no? You've been able to produce this kind of TV. So now talking about TV, we have the 500 episode. We have Ring of Honor reaching thousands of houses in the US and around the world. So do you have more plans, because you've talked about that in other interviews, like to have maybe Ring of Honor in a concrete day in the week, to have a spot on the weekly schedule? Yeah.
A destination you're talking about,
Yep.
a single point destination. Yes, we talk about it all the time, and we try and figure out how to do that in a way where everyone can receive the product and see the product. But we had plans this past summer to go to that kind of a format, but we got stopped cold like everyone else did, and we had to rethink, and we still couldn't be touring to do that. And quite frankly, we're very, very cautious still. We work very closely with our government here in Maryland, USA, and we go by their standards. We don't travel. All of our production's done here in Maryland, where the company is based. So until we are freer to think more freely, then we can revisit all of those things again, and we will.
Of course. And now you talk about the relationship with Maryland. Do you think that before this year ends, we will see a Ring of Honor show with fans in the arena?
We're talking about it. I think it'll probably be towards the back half of the year. It won't be in May, I know that, and I don't even know if it'll be in July. But I think maybe as we get towards Final Battle and those key shows, we're gonna think about it. We need to think about how we want to bring in fans and who those fans should be. We have our honor club, which are stalwarts, and I'd like to figure out a way to do something with them, because they have stuck with us through this whole thing, and I want to make sure they understand how much we appreciate them. But we're talking about it, Alex.
Perfect. So I think that's all, Mr. Koff. So now, if you want to send a message to every Ring of Honor fan that is seeing this interview, even though if they are from Spain, from another part of the country, so.
First of all, I want to thank you, because you did an incredibly nice job, and you're a smart young man. Like I said, muy guapo. I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for having me, and I want the fans in your viewing area, in your listening area, to know that you're always welcome to be a Ring of Honor fan. If you haven't seen Ring of Honor, you can see it on YouTube. You can see it on our honor club, which is rohwrestling.com. We're able to be seen in lots of places. And if you haven't experienced Ring of Honor, then you owe it to yourself, if you're a wrestling fan, to see what the best wrestling on the planet looks like. And hopefully you'll stay longer and become a real fan. And I would love to see you at some point. We have been in Europe. We've gotten as far as England, and we were talking about going on the continent as well, but everything kind of stalled. So hopefully we'll get back to that. So thank you. Gracias, mi people.